Hello, this is Miss Allison Garner for Musical Minds, and this class is for parents, teachers, and children. And I will go through my first Musical Minds book, the textbook, in this video. I'll do a different video for the teacher's manual. But the first book, you don't need to have it to do this video. If you do have it, my students should, most of them have this, and it would be good for them to have it to look at while we go through. So this is the Musical Minds Volume 1. And we're going to start out at the beginning. Form. And Unit 1 focuses on the structure of music. So I'm not going to play the CD, but if you want it better sung and more nicely spoken, the CD is good to have the kids listen to, even if it's in the background while they're doing something else. I think that it's critical to develop an environment for children that's conducive to learning. And having music playing is one way of doing that. Another way of doing that is just having available to them within reach, good works of art, literature, music as well, and texture and things that will stimulate their sensory perception. All of this is part of developing an aesthetic sense that a child needs to be able to be whole in the world. And I think that we often miss that in school. There's so many other demands on teachers to learn skill. And I think skill is important, but it's meaningless without the heart and the head that goes with it. So the Musical Minds series does this. It trains the mind and the heart of the child by providing in his or her environment a musical place to be. They can start to develop a relationship of their own. And parents are busy and families are crushed, and we have so many demands on our time and energy that this is something children can do with their parents, with their teachers, with each other, or alone. So I encourage you to use some of these ideas, if not all of them, so that you are creating for your child a musical environment from which everything they learn in lesson has a context. So the first unit on form begins with a folktale, The Gingerbread Boy. A long time ago, there was a little old woman who lived all by herself in a little old house. One day, while the little old woman was baking, she said, "I will make a little gingerbread boy." And so she did. When the gingerbread boy had baked just enough, the little old woman opened the oven door, and out jumped the gingerbread boy, and away he ran. "Stop! Stop!" she cried, but the gingerbread boy just kept on running. He's saying, "I'm so fast as you can see. I'm the gingerbread boy. You can't catch me." Cows were grazing in a green pasture. As the gingerbread boy ran along, he came to a willow tree, and under it, a big red cow. "Stop, stop," she cried, but the gingerbread boy just kept on running. He's saying, "I'm so fast as you can see. I'm the gingerbread boy. You can't catch me." Dogs were playing in a fenced-in yard. As the gingerbread boy ran along, he came to a brown dog. "Stop, stop," he cried, but the gingerbread boy just kept on running. He's saying, "I'm so fast as you can see. I'm the gingerbread boy. You can't catch me." So this tale is put in form. so that whenever we have something that is repeated like a refrain, stop, stop, he cried or she cried. That is the A section. It is the part that is repeated. Oh, excuse me, it's the B section. The B section that is repeated in this. And the A and the C and the D sections introduce some new material. And so we have illustrated in this tale a simple form that we find in literature, and we find in dance, and we also find in our music. So I asked the children to draw a picture of the gingerbread boy as he's running. And I asked the children to also draw a picture of one of the places that he visits. The brown dog, the red cow, or when he's with the grandmother. So that we have a picture of the B part that is repeated and a picture of one of the other sections that's different. We can do this in poetry, and we can do this in pictures. So if I had a picture of an apple and a bee, are they the same? No, that's an apple and that's a bee. That's an A and that's a B. The next one is, what's that? Apple, bee, and that might be harder to see, but it's a kitty cat. Are those the same or are they different? They're different. A, B, C. But let's look at the third one. What is this? Apple, B, what's that? It's another apple. So what's the same and what's different? A, B, A. And to extend that, I would do twinkle. If your child is already starting an instrument, they're probably learning Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and they start with the bread or the A part, and then they learn the B part, and they may call that the cheese or something else, and then that ends with the A. So I would then play the part of Twinkle that they know, or listen to it on the CD. A, B, A. So in chants and poetry, we also have form. So I'm going to say a poem, and this is the page I'm looking at. It's on page 9, and it's Queen, Queen Caroline washed her hair in turpentine, turpentine to make it shine. Queen, Queen Caroline. So let's listen for the line. There are 4 lines. Let's listen for any lines that repeat. Queen, Queen Caroline washed her hair in turpentine, turpentine to make it shine. Queen, Queen Caroline. The first one and the last one are the same. The middle 2 are different. So A, B, C, A would be that form. And you can do that with any number of tunes. I have a list of tunes here that are either sung or chanted. And you can listen to the CD and see if there's anything that you recognize that comes back. And that helps you identify the form. Why is form important? Form is important because it helps us get our ideas across in a way that's understandable. So if we have an idea of what that form is, we can memorize more quickly and we understand the music better. so that we can play it in a way that the people who are listening to us can understand. So I also have in this unit things that you can do with your instrument, or in group class, or in private lesson, or at home in practice, that you can do that involves form. So, for example, you can take a tune that you know, like Lightly Row. And Lightly Row goes like this. And after you've played it, you can identify the form. In this case, the first line is A, the second line is B, and then we have a different line, that's C, and then the B is repeated. So we can play it knowing that form and then play with it. Then we can do A, B, C and stop. Or we could do A, B, B. Or we could do A. We could do all sorts of things. And the child can come up with his own arrangements of these tunes. But once you start manipulating these sections, being able to hear them and play them back in a different order, you're really learning things on a much more deep level than you would if you just played it straight through the same way every time. You're having to actually improvise a little bit, and that's using different parts of the brain. So that's one thing you could do. You could have in group class one group do the A and another group do the B and another group do the C. And then you could switch it. The C group does A, the B group does C, and that kind of thing. So that would be another thing. You can also hold up signs that the children have made, A, B, so that they're having to identify it. One thing that I have my students do in private lessons and in group classes is to move a different way for every section. So maybe they walk in one section, maybe they march in another section, and maybe in another section they do a skating motion. But they're doing something different in every section. So if something is repeated, that A comes back or that B comes back, they have to do the same motion, the same movement that they had done previously in that section. So it's engaging the whole child, the whole body is involved when you do it that way. And you're not strapped down with technique yet. You are worrying about technique once that violin's under your shoulder, or you're sitting down at the piano, or having to, have your cello position. This is a precursor to that. Then you can go to the instrument, and you're going to it with a whole lot more sensory and knowledge and intelligence than you otherwise would. So I also have materials, folk tales that you can use, and tunes and poems that are on the CD that you can use with your child that are listed. The next unit is beat, meter, and rhythm, and looks like this. And we're going to go into this section and probably pause before we do the rest of the book, because that's going to make this really long for a little one. So on page 17, I have a list of poems, chants, and tunes that are used in my classes and are on the CD to listen to. What we are focusing on in all of these is subdivision and doubling of the beat. So first we have to establish a beat. I often use a counting book. So the Hungry Caterpillar is the one that's here, but it could be, I have another one that I use that I can't even remember the name of, but any kind of counting book, and there are tons of them out there. But that can establish your beat. With the little ones, they need to get a sense of progression, but also a sense of steadiness, right? That beat has to be ingrained. So once we have a beat, and we can do it this way, this is a 2/4 pattern. We can just do it tapping this way, tapping our knees that way would work as well. I'm not so happy about this. I think that that's a good contrast, but I don't get kind of tired of that. So anyway, you have many ways you can have a beat established. Starting a class with little ones with something where they're having to keep a beat is a very, very, very helpful thing, because they're starting from the very beginning to have to listen, to respond, and to coordinate it with their bodies. So I have a tune that I use for really littles, 2-3-year-olds, called This Is the Way. And you can use it, we'll do it right now, but you can use it any way you choose with any motions you choose. So you can respond to what you're seeing. If you're losing your kids, you can do something different. But it goes, here's the beat. This is the way I tap my knees, I tap my knees, I tap my knees. This is the way I tap my knees so early in the morning. This is the way I touch my nose, I touch my nose, I touch my nose. This is the way I touch my nose so early in the morning. This is the way I touch my ears, I touch my ears, I touch my ears. This is the way I touch my ears so early in the morning. This is the way I tap my shoulders, I tap my shoulders, I tap my shoulders. This is the way I tap my shoulders so early in the morning. And so then if we move to a poem, such as, I'm trying to find one that I haven't put on another one. Well, here's Wibbleton to Wobbleton. Wibbleton to Wobbleton is 15 miles. Wobbleton to Wibbleton is 15 miles. We're still keeping the beat, but we're starting to subdivide it. They don't know that. They can just say the words once they hear it enough. And if they're listening to the CD on a regular basis, just like the Suzuki method, it is the Suzuki method. If they're listening to it on a regular basis, they're memorizing it just by having it in their air. So they start to learn it. And when they start to learn it, they're already intuitively learning beat and subdivision of the beat and doubling of the beat, which would be going from quarter notes to half notes. So oftentimes with these patterns in group class, and the teacher's manual video will really go into this because it's all lessons. So it really just shows you exactly how to do everything. But often what I do is I establish a beat, we do a poem, we may highlight a certain rhythm there, 16th notes or 1-and-1 rhythm, something is highlighted and we use an instrument or something to make that stand out. And then we add an ostinato, and the ostinato is the accompaniment. And the ostinato is usually a slower rhythmic value, like a half note. Wibbleton to Wobbleton is 15 miles. Wobbleton to Wibbleton is 15 miles. So that we're doing the macro and the micro beats. All right. So another one that is on here is grandfather clock says tick tock, tick tock. Kitchen clock says tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. And Mama's little watch says ticka 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 ticka. So moving on, number 1, number 2, I've done on another video. That's a group class activity, but you can do that privately with one child. And that's doing number 1, using feet and walking around the room to the beat. Number 2 is using hands, so that would just be clapping. Number 1, that would be feet. Number 2, hands. And I go back to number 1 and number 2 whenever we've learned something new. So if we have just established beat, we'll just do what I just did, which is just doing quarter notes. But in the next section, page 19, we're going to do Handy Spandy. And Handy Spandy is basically just beat. And this is the tune that I do with my piano students when they first start. They learn 4/4 meter C's. Handy Spandy, Jack a dandy, loves plum cake and sugar candy. He bought some at a grocer's shop, and out he came, hop, 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 hop. So we only have a rest on the last part. Everything's quarter notes that we have in here. So in the book, I have hearts signifying the beats. So every heartbeat is a beat. And in this case, those are quarter notes. So I've put quarter notes underneath the hearts. They're the heartbeat of this poem. So let's read from here, and I will say it while I point. Handy Spandy, Jack a dandy, loves plum cake and sugar candy. So that is our beat. It's also the rhythm of the chant. So when we put this on paper for children, I start out with ear. I do not start out with reading, but I do have the reading materials around in their environment, just like their listening is in their environment. So, for example, if we wanted to organize our beats so they make them a little bit easier to read, we can organize them in 2s or in 4s, and then put a line there until we get to the next group. And that's how I introduce meter. With that, in a movement activity, we would do or, and they have to bend on the first beat and tiptoe on the other 1 or 3. And they're walking. Another thing, if that's a little difficult, they can do step, step. So that any way that they can get it internalized through movement is good. So then the next page, the kids on page 21 can put in their heartbeats under the ones. 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. And 2 ones equal a 2. So we have a new note, the half note. It's not colored in, and it's a 2. So we go back to this. Number 1. Number 2. Number 1. So we're in our feet, and now we're going to do this. Slow steps. If we go to number 2, the claps don't really show it as much, but it would still be clap, clap, doubling the beat. All right, so that is our introduction to doubling the beat. And I often use as an ostinato for the poetry that we do. I just did Wibbleton to Wobbleton. We could do Wibbleton to Wobbleton is 15 miles. Wobbleton to Wibbleton is 15 miles. Okay, so you can then use quarter notes and half notes and patterns. And I use lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of patterns because I think that's easier to learn patterns. And then once you learn some patterns, you can start to identify differences between them and similarities. So then the children that have books can go on and fill out and write in the answers to the next things. We get into subdivision, and we're reading now note values that are quarters, halves, eighths, whole notes, and then we get into new poetry. So we just did Handy Spandy. Let's see, here's one. Ski slope, take it easy, watch out, here we come, watch out, here we come, whee, plop. And we have all sorts of rhythms in there. So we can do just a beat, and then we can try clapping the rhythm. Ski slope, take it easy, watch out, here we come, watch out, here we come, wee, plop. So we're doubling the beat at the end, but we're also doing some subdivision now. We don't talk about it, we just do it. And then they start to become aware of it before we start calling it a quarter note or an eighth note or a 16th or whatever we're working on. So at the bottom of the page, we have a tune called Lady, and it is in 3/4 meter. So we're back to our number 1, number 2. Number 1, we're walking. Bend your knee when you hear the accent. So now we're in 4/4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2/4. 1, 2, 1, 2. Now we're in 3/4. So that's a little more challenging for little ones because the downbeat is always on a different foot. They have to alternate. So I do down, up, down, up. but alternating the feet can be a little bit challenging for the little ones. So by 5, they're good. But if you've got 2 and 3-year-olds, that's not going to work so well. So you may want them to just jump or sink, something that will identify the downbeat for them. All right? So that tune is Lady, Lady, buy a broom for my baby. Sweep it low, sweep it high, sweep the cobwebs out of the sky. Lady, lady, buy a broom for my baby. So it's a sweet tune, and there's a lot you can do with it. And I think we do something with it in the manual. So when I get to that video, we'll be using a lot of these tunes the way I use them in a class. They'll already be organized into lesson plans. So then children can fill in meters and rhythms, and there's a rhythm game in here that they can do. If they cut out the cards, they can then place them on trains. So we have a train game that uses the rhythm in different meters. So that brings us to the end of that unit. And I have group activity ideas without instruments and using instruments. So using, let's see, for example, for level end of book 1 and beginning book 2 students, we can use the Twinkle variation rhythms and introduce new rhythms through the Twinkle variations. So if they're starting to get into dotted rhythms, like the dotted 8th, 16th, that happens in the second book, then we can do that as the rhythm. That kind of thing. I also like to do a lot of improvisation. And I start out with the improvisation with the younger kids without instruments, because they have no impediments called, violin technique or piano technique. But I transfer it to the instrument as soon as I can. And so for the kids that have been through most of book 1, if not all of book 1, certainly, they can change a melody, a melodic, rhythmic line to something else that they know. So, Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star. Rhythm. So it's pretty much quarter notes and then a half note. But if we were doing Maison, that's a completely different rhythm. And then we're having to totally rethink what we're doing. But they have to know both pieces extremely well and be able to discriminate between melody and rhythm, and on the spot figure out how they could be reattached in different ways. So it's a very much more advanced way of doing a group class with this age group. But if a child has been playing through most of book one, they're ready to do that. With a lot of the tunes, and I don't do this because on the video because I don't know about copywriting, but I take the CD for Suzuki piano or cello or violin or whatever group I have in front of me, and I do movements with those tunes, and we go through the, like all of 1A at least. And the kids at first are just mimicking me, and I've choreographed movement that shows the rhythm and shows the difference in form, and it may show some aesthetic qualities like dynamics or expressive markings like articulation, all of that. But what I find is I get through 3 or 4 of those, and then they're starting to improvise. And that's great. That's where I want them to go. I want to give them a little bit, get their juices going, give them some ideas, a little bit of a movement vocabulary, and then they start having their own ideas to what a rest should look like in their bodies, or what they should do with a staccato. So I've choreographed all of the cello book one, all of the piano book one, and all of the violin book one. And this has happened over and over again. The kids follow me, they mimic, they ape what I do, and then all of a sudden they start doing a little bit different. But it's responsive to what they're hearing. I don't care. I don't have all the ideas. So it's good. That's when they make it their own, and they're really actually showing that they understand it more. So that is the end of that unit. I have musical selections like bolero that have rhythmic patterns that are repeated, ostinati, things that the kids can be listening to that support what we've been doing in here and in their lessons. We take the rhythm in a lot of the pieces that they're working on and use them as ostinato patterns. Maybe I will accompany them while they're playing light libero with an ostinato that they have picked out that's in that piece. There are lots of ways that we can integrate this and make it a creative process for them, where they're using all sides of their brain to understand and to apply what they've learned. So I have stories and books as examples of what they can do with reading. And once again, the teacher's manual will go into actually doing that with the children. The next 2 units I will do on a different video. This is Unit 3, Pitch, which will take a little bit of time. And then we get into expressive markings like dynamics and articulation, tempo changes, and some terminology. So we'll get into that in the next video. Thank you.